He's reported from war zones, political battlegrounds, some of the biggest moments in modern history. But now NewsNation anchor and veteran journalist Leland Vittert is opening up about a very personal story.
So in his new memoir, Born Lucky, a dedicated father, a grateful son, and my journey with autism, he shares the life-changing lessons he learned from his relationship with his father. So Leland, good morning to you. Great to have you on this morning.
Dan and Hazel, nice to see you as well.
So, I mean, let's talk about it. You've had quite the career. You've covered revolutions, wars, some of the most intense breaking news. So what made you decide that now was the time to write a book and something so personal?
That's a great question. Right now, we are in a reckoning about what parenting means in America. Obviously, autism is in the news. We didn't know that when I decided to tell this story. But this is a story for every parent or family member or friend who has a kid struggling the way I did, whether it be with autism or ADHD, anxiety, or bullying. This is proof that there is real hope out there. And George Will wrote the foreword to this. He said, this is proof of the monumental power of parental love. And my dad, when I was diagnosed with autism at about 5, what we now know to be autism, he said, I am not going to adapt the world to Lucky. I'm not going to try and put bubble wrap around him. I am going to adapt him to the world. So he didn't tell anybody about my diagnosis. He just tried to help me be more.
Yeah, I mean, so with him not doing that, right, not telling anybody, how did it feel to, at this point in your life, share the story now?
You know, I never went to therapy, right? Never had any special accommodations. There was no extra time on desk, none of that stuff. And now I'm going to therapy on national television. So here it goes. But, you know, you think about what this was like for my parents. 7th grade, 2 weeks into my new school where they'd hoped I was getting a fresh start after having been, you know, put with the girls in PE class because things were so tough. The principal calls them in and says, hey, most people at this school think Lucky is really weird. Lucky was my childhood nickname. So arrow number 1 through my dad's heart. And then the teacher, the principal follows up and says, and I think he's pretty weird too, which meant that everything that was happening to me was my fault, right? You know, 8th grade, there was an art teacher, 8th grade art class, art all around you, everything else. And the teacher looks at me and says, if my dog was as ugly as you, I would shave its rear end and make it walk backwards. Didn't use rear end. So you remember these things. And I was a weird kid, but my dad sort of decided that there was a different path than just saying to everybody he's weird, you have to accept him, and decided to help shape me into what I am now.
Oh, I love that. And you dedicated your book to your father. So tell me some of the things that he did then to help you navigate through all of this.
It's a great question, Hazel. And you think about, there was really in the mid-1980s very little understanding of what autism is, very little understanding of how to help kids. So, for example, if we were going to go out to lunch, I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any play dates. My dad was my only friend. As he said, when I realized you didn't have any friends, I was going to be your friend. But we'd go out to lunch, and let's say we're going out to lunch with Dan and Hazel, and I would have loved it because I love talking about politics and the news and that stuff even back then. And I would start peppering you guys with questions. Well, you know, who writes your scripts? What time do you get up? How many cups of coffee do you have in the how many cups of coffee do you have in the morning? And at some point, he would tap his watch, and that was my signal to stop talking at lunch, and then also to bookmark that moment, because then we'd go back afterwards, almost like watching game film, and go through. So, okay, when Dan was talking about his kids and what he likes to do on the weekend, Lucky, why did you think you wanted to ask him about who wrote his scripts? Why was that important? And that is that story. So this isn't a prescription, it isn't a cure, but it is a way to provide hope to so many families who, when they get a diagnosis, are hopeless.
Yeah, I mean, the way you talk about your father, by the way, and the stories that you have, the lessons that he put upon you are exemplary behavior for other parents that are watching this right now, right? Wondering if something's going on with their own kiddos. So what is your message to some of those families right now who might read your book, right, and say, okay, on the flip side, I'm a parent and want to make sure that my child has as good a life as Leland?
Well, the message is there really is hope, right? And you don't have to be defined by a diagnosis. And I think there is so much right now in this reckoning that we're going on in parenting about whether or not to just sort of meet kids where they are and say, okay, Sally is perfect no matter how difficult Sally is. And you put up pictures, for example, of me playing tennis. One of the things that my dad always would do is tell the truth to me. So I really wanted to play tennis in 7th grade. He was a very gifted athlete. That was sort of one of the things that really helped him in school. And after about the 3rd tennis lesson I had, he pulled me over to the side of the court before we drove home. He said, "Look, Lucky," he said, "I'm going to tell you something. You're going to never be able to play tennis," which was heart crushing to me because I had asked a girl that I really liked to play tennis later that week. But he said, "You will always be terrible at this. I will take you to lessons. I will do everything I can to help you. You will be terrible," which was great because I knew at that point, as hard as that was to hear, he's going to always tell me the truth. And I think the lesson of hope for parents, and that parents really can make this enormous difference, and the experts aren't always right, is really the takeaway here.
Yeah, how proud he must have been of you and your growth, but how proud you must be of your dad and all of the hard work he did.
Quit his job when I was diagnosed and said, "I'm going to dedicate my life to helping my little boy."
That is something else. And now there's a special, right? A Born Lucky special on NewsNation coming up.
Look, this is a different kind of story, right? And I realize that, and we as journalists never like to be the story. So I asked Bill O'Reilly. He and I have done a number of book specials together to flip the script on me, right? So now Bill is going to be asking me the questions, and that's Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern on NewsNation. And be honored if you all come along with this on this journey with us. And obviously, the book is available now on Amazon.
Yeah, good stuff. Leland, appreciate you talking to us this morning and for putting your story out there. It's important.